Welcome to The Quad, the Board Game Geek show where four notorious characters from around the world of hobby board gaming meet to discuss game-related topics. Each one of us will argue, defend, or fight to have our chosen example shown to be the best example in the given category that we have for this week. I'm Stephen Bonacore, the Podfather of Gaming, chairman of the board for the new publisher Play to Z, member of the board of directors of the World Series of Board Gaming, and you can find me all over social media, including Facebook in the Podfather of Gaming group and my YouTube channel, amazingly called the Podfather of Gaming, and my very long-running podcast, Board Games Insider, which is now powered by BoardGameGeek and available on audio as well as my YouTube channel.
Oh, is it my turn now?
Oh, I'm sorry. Too many credits.
I'm Candice Harris from Board Game Geek.
Okay, cool. Wow. Well, my name is Matthew McCack. I am one half of Room 51. You can find me on Twitch as Room 51 Live or on YouTube as Room 51. You can also catch me on Tabletop Live Network on Twitch. And you can find me on all sorts of social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, all at This Is Room 51.
And I am Marty Connell, half of Rolling Dice and Taking Names Gaming Podcast. And you can find us on all the socials at Dice and Names. And our podcast is everywhere that you listen to podcasts.
Excellent. Marty, thank you so much for being with us today. And on pretty short notice, too. We appreciate it very much.
Oh, I'm excited about this. Thank you so much for asking me. And it's early enough for me that it's not just before my bedtime, which is great.
All right. Today, we are going to discuss, give me that drum roll, Derek, the best CCG/TCG. And each of us is going to tell you why our example is the best of these games, or our favorite in the genre, or what makes it special in this category. But let's first define for the audience, what is a CCG and TCG? Marty, go for it.
Well, I think the most popular example is going to be something everybody's probably heard of, which is Magic the Gathering. And TCG stands for trading card game, CCG's collectible card game, but they both kind of mean the same business model. This is going to be a card game that you play by building a deck outside of the game. It's not like a deck builder where you're constructing a deck in-game. You build one outside the game. And this is done through typically purchase of booster packs. Now, these are randomized packs of cards that you will buy that typically have different sorts of rarities like common, uncommon, rare, etc. So you're buying these packs, opening them up, trying to construct a deck and go play against others. It could be head-to-head. There's some multiplayer games out there. But this is a game that's been around. I guess Magic was probably the first, coming from 93, 94. So there's over 30 years old now, this format, and is probably one of the most popular genres of tabletop games, and is probably the biggest moneymaker each year when it comes into the collectible style of games. It's kind of what's driving the market right now, which is why I was excited to talk about it, because it is such a huge part of the hobby, and it's actually how I myself got into the hobby.
Oh, wow, that's very interesting. Ask one question. Is there really a difference between a CCG and a TCG? Or are they really like the TCG just has like a better PR agent? Because people don't like to say the word collectible.
Anybody else? Well, I mean, I'm going to say they're the exact same thing. Because before we got started, there was some confusion over this, and I'll explain what the confusion was in a second. If you go like to Wikipedia and you look up trading card game, it's going to have like a history. If you look up collectible card game, it sends you straight back to trading card games. These are synonymous. They're the same things. We were getting into a heated discussion before we even started because Stephen, I believe
somebody thought it was a different thing. Where I thought maybe
that would be you.
That would be me.
Thought it was the living card game,
yes,
which is a format that Fantasy Flight introduced in around the 2009-2010, which is basically instead of a random booster pack, it is a set pack of cards. Every pack has the exact same set of cards in it. Everything else is kind of the same. You play the game, you construct a deck and come in and play the game. But it's the business model behind it's totally different. Right. So an LCG or expandable card game, because they trademarked LCG, is different than a TCG, right. CCG.
So we're not talking LCGs here. This is CCG, TCG. Mm-hmm. All right. So who's the first person? I believe, Matthew, you volunteered to be the first person to give us your game. Or maybe you were voluntold, one or the other.
I was voluntold, but also accepted. Yes, so I am an absolute sucker for CCG slash TCG, so this is going to be very hard to argue with all of you. But I definitely have the best pick. So my pick is Dice Masters, which was published in 2014, designed by Mike Elliott and Eric Lang, who both are known for great games. And I believe Mike Elliott was one of the designers as well for Magic the Gathering, at least at one point. But this was published by WizKids, and so this has been around for a while. Now, it has a bunch of different IPs. I believe it started out with DC and Marvel superheroes, but then it expanded, and then you could have superheroes, Yu-Gi-Oh!, all the way to like WWE, Warhammer, all that kind of stuff, and you can mix and match. It doesn't matter. I liked personally to stick to the superheroes, the DC and Marvel stuff. That is what's fun for me. But essentially, you're building out your deck, so to speak, but it's really a team of characters. And you get just 8 cards. What you're really collecting is the dice for each of these cards, because each card can have usually a maximum of 4 dice that you can use. And the main mechanism of this game is bag building. So you are building out, so you have access to all the cards that you've already pre-constructed. But now, during the game, you're actually building your bag to see which heroes or whatever characters you're going to put into the bag. That way you can pull them out and roll them and then place them into the field. And you're trying to go against your opponent to bring them down to 0 life points from 20. So everybody starts with 20 life points. You're trying to bring them down to 0. The interesting thing with this game is that when you roll the dice and you're getting to place out the characters and everything, you have to make this interesting decision of attacking or using your characters as defense. And even if you decide to defend the character, so that way they can't attack your life points directly, that's fine. It'll go into your KO pool and you'll get to re-roll them, put them right back into the field. However, if you don't defend the character, that character then gets put into the player's user pool. And now you have to wait to be able to get that back into your bag again, to be able to put that back into the field. So that creates really interesting decisions along with the bag building itself, where it's like, okay, what do I really need this game up against this particular opponent? And there is a way to mitigate the dice rolls themselves. So you have a couple of re-rolls, and even if you don't get the character or whatever that you're hoping for, everything has an energy. And that is the cost to purchase more dice to put into your bag. I love this game. It is so much fun. I have the most fun with this game out of any other collectible card game that I've played. And I just love all the IPs and everything. And like I said, specifically the superheroes, this one is by far the most fun. It's got the booster packs and everything. Although now they have like campaign boxes and draft boxes and everything that you can get and whatnot. It's also one of the cheaper ones too of the CCGs. I remember the booster packs were like $1 for a pack, which was pretty cool. But anyway, that's my pick. The best CCG of all time, Dice Masters.
Well, Matthew, first of all, that game is more about the dice than it is the cards in the deck. The dice are the star of that game, not the cards. So you're like picking a bag building, dice rolling game. We'll start with that. We'll just start with that. Number 2, it's 2 players. Boring. Go find some friends and play my game when I talk to you about my game.
I have lots of friends.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same comment about the dice here. I thought the topic was TCG, CCG, not TDG. I didn't know we were doing trading dice games here. And also, I haven't played Dice Masters, so, take everything I say with a grain of salt, but like delicious salt, Himalayan salt, I would rather play Ashes Reborn to use dice with cards in a much better way than what I've seen from Dice Masters. So I just don't think it's a good fit, and it definitely is not the best game on this list.
What? Open your horizons, people.
Matthew, I think it's a fantastic game. I played this game day one, and I was super into it. My biggest nitpick was it was so popular and they couldn't keep this thing in stock that it actually got hurt early on. Yeah. Because I remember at our local game store, people were buying it like crazy, and then everything just kind of ran out. The same sort of thing happened with Star Wars Destiny, where that game was really hot, and you had the issue with the dice and manufacturing. Here locally, WizKids just could not keep up, so it kind of fell off. But mechanically, I really liked everything about the game. I even printed my own little neoprene mat with the little play areas and everything like that. So
me too.
I was really heavy into the game early on, but only fell out of it just because it was so hard to get. It just wasn't as well supported though. Mechanically, I liked everything about it.
You're supposed to disagree more, Tom, Marty.
But I can't. I mean,
a little bit more.
Making up stuff at this point. I'm a huge TCG fan, and this was one I was heavily invested to. I still have my dice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Me too. Yeah. See, Marty's great. He's the only one who knows what's going on here.
It's like, look.
But you didn't pick this, Marty. Why didn't you pick Dice Masters
I did
then?
not pick it because it's not my favorite.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, what is your favorite, Marty?
So my favorite is actually the game that got me into the hobby game, which is the Lord of the Rings trading card game. This was when the movies came out, so it was around 1999, 2000, 2001, something like that. And my brother-in-law actually introduced me to this game, and I totally missed the Magic the Gathering era. I don't know how I did, but I missed it. It's probably pretty good because I'd be broke. So he introduced me to this, and I thought, oh, this is really cool. So you build decks and you play, but thematically is what I really got into. I was really heavily into the Lord of the Rings that time. I was reading the books, getting ready to watch the movies. And the way the game is ran is you build, you combine two different sets of decks. You have a villain deck and like a hero deck. The hero deck is the fellowship deck. And out on the table, you've got these sites or locations that you're going to travel down. There's 9 of them. And when you're playing as the fellowship, your goal is to put some units out there and try to progress from one location to the other. The other person is drawing cards from their deck, and they're going to have some of the villain cards. And on their turn, they're going to try to stop you from progressing. Now, when the turn ends, it's going to flip roles. Then the other person is going to be trying to progress down the track, and then the other person is going to be playing the villain. The resource management is one thing that really hooked me into this game, and I've not seen hardly any other game have this. And I've been talking to other publishers saying, please bring this back. As opposed to Magic the Gathering, where you just had mana out that you would tap, the fellowship player could play as many resources that they want. We had glass beads, and for everything that you played, you added a bead to the pool in the middle of the table based on the cost of the card. When you're done, your opponent, that was his resource pool to use that they would pull from and spend to put stuff on their table. So the more you spent, the more you gave to your opponent to also spend against you. And this worked really well, not only 1v1, because you said it was boring, Stephen, just playing 1v1. This supported multiplayer. And how this worked is it could play up to 4 players. If I was the fellowship, the other 3 were playing against me. But what they had to do was share that pool of resources. So they had to talk amongst themselves. Hey, look, leave me 3 resources. You take 2. I'll take 1. We'll see if we can stop him. But there's also a push your luck element, because when you're done with your turn, you can try to go to the next location. But if you choose to go to the next location, you don't get to draw any new cards, but everybody else does. So they get to refresh their hand, and any monsters that are left on the table that you didn't defeat and resources that are there will stay there for the next turn. So it has a really cool resource management and a push your luck thing that I've just not seen in any other card game since then.
So I love Lord of the Rings also, and I would be curious to try this at some point. But there are a couple of things that stood out to me about this game as not being like amazing. One, I think the dual deck thing where you have Shadow and Free People's cards all like mixed in one deck is a little weird. I'd rather play as one side against the other side. Also, I think at this point, that game is dead and the LCG exists, and the Lord of the Rings LCG is just amazing. We also have War of the Ring, the card game now, which is also amazing. So why would I play Lord of the Rings TCG?
Yeah.
Well, you make good points. Actually, part of my issue is with combining the decks because sometimes you just didn't draw into what you wanted. However, the Lord of the Rings LCG is not PvP, and this one is. That's strictly just co-op. And I still like the idea of opening packs and building packs, which the LCG just does not give you. It is dated, but nobody else still has that resource management that
did sound neat. That did sound neat. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say that this is not a game I've played. I love Lord of the Rings. The theme, it would be a game that I would absolutely try for sure. My two biggest things was one was the combination of the shadow and the fellowship stuff being combined, where then, like you said, you could kind of draw into something you really don't want / need in order to win. And then the other thing, this is a nitpick. It's really the artwork, where it used from the movie. What are they called? Like still
movie
pictures
stills,
or whatever. Movie stills. There we go. And it's like I would have liked, kind of what the LCG does, where it has, their own artwork and everything. That would be
illustrated.
Cool. Yeah, illustrated and everything. So that would be cool. That being said, yeah, I don't even know why Candice would bring an LCG into this argument. We're not talking about it.
Faux pas, bringing in an LCG up. All right, so it's also pretty hard for me to bash this one, too. I played once, but like a million years ago. And if anybody knows me, I'm the hugest fan of Lord of the Rings. War of the Ring being my number one game of all time. Candice and I are going to be playing that in about a week and a half or something like that. And I do appreciate, Marty, the use of those glass beads in the shared pool, a thing that you're about to hear when I talk about my game used in a much better way. But it's a similar kind of thing, that shared pool with the glass beads and all that. The cards, yeah, Candice had it like this, having both of the cards in the same deck gets really wonky, and in that general implementation with War of the Ring, the card game is broken out specifically, right? You have shadow players, you have free people's players, and it just works. That game works so well. I'll have to put that into one of these at some point when we get there. And Marty, basically this is a 2-player game. Sure, there's ways of playing it, but it's a 2-player game. It says it on BoardGameGeek, best at 2. Wait, so BoardGameGeek is wrong, Marty. Is that what you're saying here?
Yes. 100%. 100%. It's one of the best multiplayer card games I've ever played because it's so balanced with how the resources are done. Nope.
All right. BoardGameGeek is wrong. All right. Candice.
Yes.
Let's move on. Let's move on. These are small potato games here.
What?
My choice is Flesh and Blood. Flesh and Blood is an awesome, action-packed trading card game created by James White. It's been around since 2019, so it's a baby out of the games that have been mentioned so far. But it is thriving and just growing and evolving, and it's awesome. But it's published by Legend Story Studios, which is based in New Zealand, and the main player count, Bonacore, yes, is 2 players. It's usually most commonly played 1v1, but there's also a multiplayer ultimate pit fight format where you can play 4 or 5, and it gives it a whole new dynamic, add some politics. And they're also developing a co-op PvE format. So lots of flexibility for how you can play this game. But Flesh and Blood is set in a fantasy world, and you're going to be competing as a hero fighting another hero, or if it's multiplayer, fighting multiple heroes. But you're going to pick your hero, and then you're going to build a deck, or you can, use a pre-constructed deck, which are available. But there are more than 40 different heroes, and within those heroes, like, there are different class types. Like, you have warriors, you have guardians, illusionists, ninjas, rangers, wizards, assassins, all these different types of heroes, and they all have their own play styles, which is very, very thematic. Each hero is going to have their own special ability, and then after you pick your hero, you're going to get to set up your hero with some equipment on their head, chest, arms, and legs, and also weapons. And this is like representing, you're coming into this fight like fully, it's not like Magic where we gotta build up our lands and mana and all that. No, we're heroes duking it out. We're showing up with our gear fully intact, ready to go. And as the game progresses and we're fighting each other, we're dwindling down our gear and equipment and, making each other weaker. But basically, the flow of the game is in the classic constructed format, most heroes are going to start with 40 health. You're going to be trying to get your opponent's health down to 0. Each hero has an intellect value, which is typically 4, and that's how many cards you're going to start with and draw back at the end of each turn. But you're going to alternate taking turns attacking each other. So if I'm the attacker, I will maybe either use a weapon or play attack cards from my hand to start, simulating me attacking you as a hero. And then you have a choice as the defender to play cards from your hand to block. But this is where one of the juiciest decisions comes from in this game, because the cards that you choose to block with, you're not going to get to draw back when it's my turn as the attacker. So you have to really think about, how much do I, is it worth me to get rid of these cards to block this, or should I absorb that damage so then when it's my turn to attack, I could slap you back, in a powerful way. But actions cost 0 to 3 resources. When you pay for cards, you're going to pitch cards from your hand. So each card is a multi-use where you can attack with cards, defend with them, or use them to play other cards. And the neat thing is, with the cards that you're pitching to pay for other cards, they are going to go to the bottom of your deck at the end of your turn. So you will likely see those cards again. And there's a whole strategy with deciding which cards do I want to pitch and in what order, because as you go through your deck, you're getting weaker. So you want to have some good cards to kind of hopefully finish out the match with. The combat feels realistic. Again, the weapons that you have for the different types of heroes, the ninjas are doing a bunch of combos and swift back-to-back kicks and punches and stuff like that. Whereas somebody like a warrior is fighting with a sword. A brute might have a big club, or, be able to do these big hits. Every character, every hero is very thematic, and there's a really tense flow of I attack, you choose to defend. Then there could be some reactions that come in to kind of surprise you. And then at the end of your turn, if you have any cards left in your hand, you can place one in your arsenal zone. And that's an extension of your hand that you can break out later. Another cool thematic touch is the ranger. The ranger has a bow. So in order to fire arrows, you have to fire them from your arsenal. So there's so many really clever thematic touches that they have added that flow with the mechanisms in a really, really cool way. So, why is Flesh and Blood awesome? Well, number one, I mentioned it already. It's so thematic, and it's really cool playing from this hero perspective. You have so many different types of heroes you can play. Even within a class, there are multiple heroes you can choose from, depending on which abilities you like. It's fun to kind of create your deck. I love how you start strong and then you weaken as you play. And then the strategy is just so incredibly deep with the multi-use cards. It makes for some of the best hand management decisions I have seen in any game, really. And, having this hand of 4 cards, you don't have that situation like in Magic where you might draw into a bad hand. You can always do something, and that's the puzzle of it. What is the best thing I can do with these 4 cards? And that decision space is just so awesome and so rich. But yeah, and you could play it casually or competitively. There's a big competitive scene. It's constantly growing. There are new heroes coming out. They're innovating different mechanisms, the artwork, the gameplay, the theming. It's all really awesome. And I don't know how many of you guys have played Flesh and Blood, but you should definitely go try it because it's awesome.
Decks built around a hero who battles other heroes in a fantasy setting. Oh God. I almost fell asleep there just saying that sentence. And
Isn't this the guy who loves
different.
Lord of the Rings, which
very
is a
different,
fantasy
very
setting?
different. And 2 players, as I said, boring. But I have never played the game, but I do hear a lot of good things about it. And it has like this huge following. This part is true. Don't they have like $1 million world championship every year? It's something crazy like that. I can't even imagine how they are selling as much to do something like that. But it doesn't sound interesting to me, but it has a great following. I'll put it that way.
It's amazing.
So my biggest nitpick to this was one, it looks very generic because it looks always just like Magic, and so what's the big deal? What's the difference? However, I have played this game. I played it last year.
There you go.
My other nitpick was it took me forever to learn it because there's no stinking good rules anywhere. I mean, I was trying to find a quick start guide or something and couldn't find anything. I had to get a friend who knew it to teach it to me. So the on-ramp to this game, unless it's been fixed, was a big pain in the butt. But once I got going, I agree with a lot of stuff that you say. It is not Magic. It is totally different. It is a 1v1 where you have one character versus another. The resource management is really different. And I will credit Flesh and Blood for the resurgence of the TCG CCG market that we've seen over the past few years with things like Lorcana, Grand Archive, Sorcery, Star Wars Unlimited this year, Altered coming out. I think people saw, wait a minute, there's still possibly a market. And just read from ICV2, they came out with their numbers of the tabletop, the hobby from 2023. Overall, the hobby grew like 1% to like 2.3 billion. But the three segments fell, like card games, board games, and RPGs. The only 2 that went up were collectible games and miniature games. And I think publishers are going, there's still a market out here.
Do that.
Lifestyle games still bring in the most money. Flesh and Blood did that. Let's see if we can do it too. But as we saw in the 2000s, after success of like the game that Steven's going to talk about and Lord of the Rings and stuff, there was a glut. And it was almost too much, and then it just collapsed.
It was a huge glut of CCGs back in the day. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say it probably has like significantly improved, Marty, since you played it, because I know like on a Flesh and Blood's website, like they have so much information, like quick start, detailed rules. There are so many like tutorial videos nowadays. So I don't know when you came in, but yeah, it's not the kind of game where they typically, like, if you buy a set, will have all the rules. You need to go online to their website. But their website has all this, like, information about all of the heroes, like special cards, play styles. So that's not a problem anymore. I'm sorry that was a problem for you, but I'm glad you enjoyed it once you got it.
They need a 2-player starter deck. They still don't have that. They've got the Blitz decks, which I play. But I still think it needs to be an on-ramp product.
They had the one Dorinthia versus Rhinar. They did have a set at some point, but it's not. Yeah.
I have not played Flesh and Blood, but I have also heard good things about it. So I can't say a whole lot about it because from my research on the game, I couldn't figure out like what was super new about it. What was it that people were really getting into? So, but one of the things I did come across, and I don't know if this is still true today, but it seemed like, well, a little bit of what Marty was saying, that there seemed to be a big entry, barrier to entry, in terms of rules, and there seems to be a lot going on in the game, and that they don't have starter decks. It sounds like an issue. So
they do have starter decks.
They do have starter decks now. Okay.
A lot of Blitz decks. Yep.
Okay.
For like lots of heroes. Yep.
But there's no rules in those starter decks.
There's no rules in them. So yeah, well, that's bizarre. But, and, the other thing, yes, the theme is a little bit, stale, although I'm always down for some fantasy, stuff. So I'm like, whatever, I'll do generic fantasy. The other thing, that I came across in research was, about, like a pay to win factor where like the rarer the cards were, you're just going to have those in the deck. And I don't know how true that is. That was just what I was finding. Whereas in other CCGs, it is okay to have some like commons or uncommons in the deck, and you could still do fairly well. But in this one, it seemed like that was not the case. I don't know if things have changed from when it did come out.
Yeah, no, that's not a thing at all. Like there are so
Okay.
many like competitive budget decks, and like
Awesome.
you could spend money and play some fancy deck and get whooped by someone with a cheap deck that knows what they're doing. So there's definitely like a skill to it. But yeah, like any card game, sure there are going to be like certain pieces of equipment that are maybe have an edge up, but it's not like absolutely necessary.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I was curious about that. But overall, yeah, I would like to try it. It wasn't one that piqued my interest as much as like the others, I will say. But it seemed okay. Steven's game, I don't know, but we'll see what Steven's pick was. I will argue that I think Keyforge was actually, because it came out just a year before Flesh and Blood, I think that actually caused a resurgence in the CCG, TCG market,
Very
but that's
possible.
just a
Very
little
possible.
tidbit.
I mean, I love Keyforge too, but like it's just slightly different because you're not
Better.
doing any deck
Right.
construction.
And
Where
that would
everything
not
else
have
here,
been allowed into this.
yeah,
It totally would have been. It's a collectible card game.
No. We would have
Yes!
vetoed
Yes.
you.
it's more of a like collectible
Yes.
deck game.
Yes. All right.
Yeah.
You're
So
collecting
the main
these
point here
decks.
is that obviously
We love
Keyforge.
Keyforge.
We're going to play Keyforge soon. Obviously, none of you have any friends, with all your 2-player games, as we mentioned. I give you
I thought you and I were friends.
Mice has 4-player.
I give you a game which BGG says is best at 5 players and recommended for 5 as well. Vampire: The Eternal Struggle, abbreviated VTES by many, originally published as Jihad in its first printing, and originally published 1994 by Wizards of the Coast with the IP under license from White Wolf Productions. Designer Richard Garfield, you might have heard of him, the designer of Magic the Gathering. The mechanics are acting. I don't know why they put that in there. It's probably not, but it's on BGG. Deck construction, hand management, multi-use cards, negotiation, player elimination, and voting. And the categories: bluffing, card game, collectible components, fighting, horror, and political. 2 to 5 players, as I mentioned, best at 5, plays in with the full player count, 120 minutes, but less at the lower player counts. And it's for ages 13 plus, certainly for the theme. So Vampire: The Eternal Struggle, or VTES for short, as I stated, was originally published by Wizards of the Coast and thematically set in the world of darkness that was created by White Wolf Productions. So Richard Garfield created this CCG around an IP from White Wolf, Vampire the Masquerade, the role-playing game, which means there were 2 major publishers of the time involved in that, both WotC and White Wolf. And the game's history unfolds from there. VTES was Richard Garfield's second CCG after, of course, Magic the Gathering, and in fact, published just a year or so after Magic the Gathering. And Mr. Garfield wanted to correct what he believed were some of the shortcomings of Magic the Gathering. The one biggest one that he pointed out was that Magic the Gathering was a 2-player game at heart. VTES is truly a multiplayer CCG, one that really stands the test of time and has come back from the dead, pun intended, and continues to be played heavily these days, as well as being back in print with new card sets coming out of Black Chantry Productions, its new publisher. There's your history lesson. Now let's talk about the game. In VTES, players take on the roles of Methuselahs, the most ancient vampires. These Methuselahs pull the strings of all the vampires and human institutions of the world, and each of them wants to be the most powerful, so they're in constant war with each other, called the Jihad. Each player creates a deck of library cards that will be played over the course of the game as they're drawn into players' hands, and a separate deck of crypt cards, the vampires that the players influence to do their bidding. Each player takes 30 blood points. Red glass beads often are used. I used to love them. They're very cool. And those blood points are not only your life or your unlife, but you must also use them to influence the vampires to do your bidding, literally pushing those points, those red or whatever color glass beads onto the vampire, and that whittles away a vampire as they do their bidding. You can create a deck with a whole bunch of small vampires. In fact, we used to call them a weenie deck. Or you can create a deck with only really huge, powerful vampires, but they're harder to get out because you got to spend all your blood. In either case, if you draw yourself down to 0 blood as the Methuselah, you are eliminated. The game has a concept of prey and predator. I am a predator of the player to my left, and that player is my prey. And similarly, I am the prey of the predator to my right, and that player, he is my predator. So players are sitting in a circle of sorts, and you can only directly affect or be affected by those on your left or your right. Not exclusively, but mainly. The decks are created and fall into basically three categories with plenty of hybrids as well. Bleed decks, using stealth, combat decks, of course, using strength, and political decks using votes. So here's how the turn goes. I'll be taking actions with my cards from my hand or utilizing the vampires that I have influenced into my tableau in front of me to do my bidding. Then using one of those deck concepts I just mentioned, I can either go after my prey, bleeding the Methuselah directly to take away his strength. It's a virtual thing. It's his blood, but it's also his influence of the world. You're bleeding them, probably using some stealth to sneak past his vampires, or using combat to beat the crap out of his vampires and therefore get to that Methuselah directly later on, or using politics. And that's vampire politics, not like the crap we got going on. You're passing new rules and effects for the game, and you need to get votes. Your deck might have lots of votes, but sometimes you need others to help you vote in some effect. Now remember, prey, predator, and me, there's two more players there that don't fall into that. And that's the genius. I can try to solicit some help in a political deck. And I used to love those because those are the most interactive to try to help me pass these things, which may then weaken the prey and predator of those other non-part of my prey-predator relationship players. Think about that dynamic. I go after my prey using one of these mechanisms. I defend myself using one of these mechanisms, and I try to elicit the support of other players on the other side of the table, which are not directly part of this, just so that I can help myself and maybe help them across. Quick explanation of the cards, and then you'll get it. As I mentioned, this game is very thematic, and it's really true to the RPG to an exceeding extent. Vampires have disciplines on them. That's the powers of the vampires. They have them in basic format or superior format. You play library cards to empower those vampiric disciplines at low levels or at higher levels, and then use modifiers to then increase the vampire's power as they go bleed or combat or do politics. That's generally how it works. It's just a beautiful system of interaction between the players at the table. Players do get eliminated over time, but then it's a cascading effect. You know, no one's going to be eliminated for the first 80%, and then there's an elimination. And the last Methuselah or player standing is the winner. In conclusion, this game, again, is another genius pick of mine. This game has truly stood the test of time, like Magic the Gathering, but of course not quite on that scale. It is a game that was supported by fans, kept alive by fans for many years, and now brought back from the undead by the fans themselves. It is unique in so many ways. Your life points must be used to power your vampires, but if you run out of them, you lose. You have a direct relationship with those on your right and your left, and the others, not a direct relationship, but they can influence things via voting, etc. Your card play powers your vampires and uses their disciplines in a very thematic context. And generally, the incredible thematic integration between this game and the whole world of darkness, Vampire the Masquerade to be exact, from White Wolf is just amazing. This is simply the best CCG ever made, and surely the best multiplayer CCG ever made. A beautiful game when you have friends, unlike some of the people here. Your honor, the defense rests.
Well, that was a nice script reading right there.
You're very welcome. I like to be very, on point.
And this is also okay, so here's the thing. I love the theme of that game. I'll be honest, I never played. I wanted to get into it, and what stopped me was your very first point. The game is too long. When I want to sit there and play a CCG, I don't want to be playing 2 hours. And then there's player elimination, where if I'm the first one out, I'm twiddling my thumbs.
For 10, 20 minutes. Nah. tops.
That's enough for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually I've never played it either. I like the theming. I think it looks extremely outdated. Like even the new version, the art is so like I don't know, like Stone Age, but and not Stone Age is the worker placement, but it just like
Smell the
it's
cup.
so out of date. Like I don't think I could even do it even if I like the mechanisms, but people I've talked to about this game said it can take forever. And like you're saying, Marty, if you're the one eliminated, like this game can just drag on and maybe past that 120 minutes. So, no, thank you.
Yeah. So I have to agree with Marty and
course you
Candice. Well, of course. And I love vampires as a whole. The theming in this is very, very cool. But yeah, the 2-hour playtime, that I could get away with that. But the player elimination then on top of it is just too much. Now, the whole, you're the predator to your left, prey on your right. That is very, very cool. But the problem that you said, Bonacor, is that I don't have any friends. So to experience this fully, I'd have to get more. Like, what is this?
I'll be your friend,
I
Matthew.
can't even play the game.
Can't play it 2 players.
If you're my only friend, Bonacor, what are we supposed to do? We
There's
have to
4 of
play
us.
Dice Masters.
Yeah, I mean, now they have Vampire Masquerade Rivals. That can be played with 2, or it's like excellent with 4.
I was excited about that game, and it just didn't float my boat. I kickstarted it, got all the cool stuff, and it just didn't stick with me.
I'm not addressing the board game that sort of related. No, not at all. This is the CCG from Richard Garfield in 1994 and continues on to this day.
Is it
look like 1994.
Is it officially supported or like fan supported sort of deal?
No, it's now relicensed to Black Chancery Games, who are bringing out new sets. As far as I know, I didn't finally read. I saw them at the UKGE, and they were about to put out some new sets of cards. So, yeah.
I asked because Netrunners there's a group out there for Netrunner
sure.
that's kind of redoing it too.
Yep.
Which is almost like a non-profit sort of deal.
Yeah, that's that's sort of different. They're kind of doing it like not to make any profit. They just want to bring out the game again and bring out the card, which is very cool too. But there's actually a company now backing this.
Yeah.
So anyway, today we tackled the very difficult topic of best CCG, TCG, and there really are a lot of good games in this category as we brought out. I hope you agree that the choices made by the co-hosts here were excellent and really representative of the category. What do you think? Tell us in the comments for the show. Agree, disagree, say Bonacor is just a dumb guy who doesn't know how to play games, or none of these people have friends except for Bonacor. Whatever you want to say, please do that. But whatever you do, please like and subscribe to this video and channel. And just in case you've forgotten, I'm Stephen Bonacor, the Podfather of Gaming.
And I'm Candice Harris from BoardGameGeek.
I'm Matthew McCack from Room 51.
And I'm Marty Connell from Rolling Dice and Taking Names.
And we hope to see you here again next time on The Quad. Smiles and look down.
Brady Bunch.
Brady Bunch looks.
And I will hit.